So we are here, I would say it's a historical commission meeting. It's Thursday, April 9th, 2020. The Historical Commission of the City, known as the Town of Watertown, will hold a public hearing on Thursday, April 9th, 2020 at 7 p.m. in accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, relating to the 2020 COVID-19 emergency, and to avoid group congregation. This meeting will only have remote opportunities for participation with public access provided. And so I just want to make sure that's on the record as why we're meeting in this manner. Okay, the only public hearing we have on the agenda tonight is for a continuation of the 88 Galen Street project. And so since the applicant did present at the last hearing, I'm just going to ask you, Mr. Doherty, if you have anything else you'd like to add before we open it for public discussion.
Sure. A couple of things, actually, and thank you for the opportunity this evening to come before the commission. I guess first and foremost, I did get a chance to get inside the premise this week with Gideon and Mr. Malone, who wanted to get an internal tour. So I was surprised at the condition of the structure. Not in very good condition at all. After we closed on that, we had some squatters that broke some windows, climbing in some windows. So there was that, but also we had done, in anticipation of taking the building down, a complete survey, and part of that showed that it had a significant amount of asbestos. And so we, through the town, through the proper procedures, got an asbestos abatement company to come in. And a lot of what was taken down, walls, ceilings, floors, a lot of material was taken out of there. Unfortunately, also, the back part, the addition to 88 Galen Street, is open to the elements. So there's some evidence of mold in there. And I know that you folks are going to present kind of the forensic look back at the history of the site. And we understand, appreciate that, respect that whole process. I would just add that to us, the house at 88, I know it was the history is it was a saloon at one time, apparently. But the reason we purchased that, we kind of needed that. It's really strategic to the contemplated development. It sits in an area that we contemplate being able to have that open as a public park, and that would be where the public access would be on the site of where 88 Galen Street and the open lot, the home that burned down. And so part of the reason we need 88 Galen Street is also there was some rights of way that were conveyed. So we want to extinguish any rights of way across the property. And I guess lastly, to us, it's kind of a nondescript, no great period detail in that home. The windows aren't original. The interior is in very poor condition. And so there's very little in the way of period detail in any of the, the siding is composition vinyl. Part of the front may be original clapboard, but that's really what I wanted to kind of just touch on, that we paid a lot of money for that site. I don't know whether that's figured into anything, but, and, to the extent, and really we didn't buy it for any value for the house. It was really the frontage and the open space requirement and the public access portion of the development of which we're contemplating. So that's what I have to say, and I'd like to hear from the commission.
Okay, thank you. Do any of the commissioners have any further questions for this applicant? And if you do, could you please state your name, just because some of the names aren't on the screen. Okay. So if none of the commissioners have any questions, further questions for the applicant, I'm going to now open it up to the public for the public to ask any questions regarding this, or actually not to ask any questions, but rather to provide information about the property or the history or any information they have about this site.
Pardon me, this is David Russo. I actually do have a question for the petitioner, if we could revert to that earlier section.
Sure.
Thank you. So thank you very much for what you said. I guess I have a few things. Do you have any documentation from either the building inspector or anyone about the condition of the building? I mean, certainly I saw the pictures that you provided, but do you have any kind of engineering reports or anything from anyone that could help us?
Well, we have the asbestos report that kind of details the infestation really in the areas where we found asbestos. But we weren't contemplating having any other reports because frankly, we thought we would come, we would present, and I guess we didn't anticipate that this may have some historical significance. So we didn't kind of go to that step. We said, well, it's in very poor condition as evidenced by the pictures and as evidenced by the asbestos removal. We've got a report, and we went through the town and did the proper protocol on that. So no, we just didn't anticipate taking the next step to say, hey, the damage represents X, and to get it back into kind of habitable condition, it would be Y. We just don't have those figures.
And how about any possibilities of maybe moving the building? Clearly, the site itself is quite large. If it could be shifted to another place on the larger lot that you've purchased, perhaps it could be used in some way. Have you contemplated at all about how it could be used in another way?
No, we really haven't contemplated a reuse of the property at all, because if it had been moved elsewhere on the site, frankly, it wouldn't be worth all the money, because the addition is from 1948 or 1958, and it has no value. It's just a blank wall on one side. I don't even think there's any windows except to the rear. That part is open to the elements. It's really in extremely poor condition, and it has no historic significance in my mind, just because it's attached to an older edifice. No.
Sure. Sure. I mean, I could certainly agree that perhaps the later addition may not be as important as the original, but certainly that could be maybe removed, and alternate arrangements made for the original building.
I suppose. I know that we paid on this site for this site and the neighboring site, which was the site where the fire destroyed the home, 1.7 million, and we've allocated on a proportional basis about $700,000 toward the purchase of, just based on the land area and the street frontage, about $700,000 in value. It's a tiny little, the original structure, if you will, is very small, maybe 300-400 square feet tops. And it's just.
Is there any way we can show the picture?
I'm having trouble hearing you.
Okay, well,
I'm sorry.
so that's okay. So just one speaker at a time, and Mr. Doherty speaking, and David, do you have any other, did you hear what he said?
I did.
Okay, and Tom Malone, did you hear what Mr. Doherty said?
Yes, I did.
Okay. All right.
Can I ask a question?
Mr. Doherty, sure, go ahead.
I just wanted, I wasn't sure if everyone had the pictures that Gideon and Mr. Malone took on the site visit.
So we do. All of the commissioners received those pictures, and Gideon has those that he can put up on a split screen at some point during the meeting.
Okay,
Want me to?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
thank you.
And Jody, is that what you were asking for? Okay,
So here's, can you see it?
Yes.
So here's the, Tom and I took pictures of the exterior and the interior throughout the site, since it was only him and I that went to the site. So this is the left facade. Oops. That's the front facade. That's the rear facade, and you can see where the roof has disappeared and rotted through. And that's another picture of the rear facade. And then that's all, it's very close to the property line on that side, so I couldn't get in there at all. I actually was I didn't want to find any wild animals. So that was what that side looked like, and a close up of how the roof is rotted through. And then the rear. And so this is, as you walk in the front door, this is the first room straight back, and the rear is where the back room is. Again, the front room, the door is right there. That's looking back towards Galen Street. And that's looking towards the river. So it's that side of the front part of the house, the structure. That was a picture that Tom and I took of the original ceiling above the added ceiling. This is a wall between two spaces in the front. And this appears to be where the kitchen used to be. And it's, there was, it's been removed. Is this working for everybody? Yeah, I think it is.
yeah.
And then,
Mr. Doherty, as Gideon's going through these pictures, when you had the asbestos company, the removal company come in, did they remove all those items that we're seeing that are gone, or were those already gone? What did they remove?
They removed all the items where they identified as containing asbestos. So there's flooring material, an old vinyl floor asbestos, the VAT tile, vinyl asbestos tile, some of the plaster, the ceiling had loads of asbestos in it. So they had to rip up the floor to get all the materials out. And there was a lot of vandalism damage in there, because there were some squatters in there for a little bit that we weren't aware of, because it was locked, but they smashed through the window, and somebody climbed in, and you can see there was a lot of food and debris and garbage that was brought in there. So there's some vandalism, and then the rest of it is really removing floors and removing walls and removing ceilings where they found asbestos containing material.
So like this, can you go back one picture of Gideon, please? This wall here was removed by the company?
Correct.
Okay,
and that was the bathroom.
okay.
So that's the end of the front part of the structure, and then this is the door into the back. And this entire floor was fairly wet, and there was definitely a lot of mold on everything. You can see daylight streaming in along the edges on every side.
But this roofing, this ceiling here was removed by the asbestos removal company?
Well, there were holes in the roof. It looked like they were living in the front part of the house, and they weren't in the addition. Because everything that we saw was in the front part of the house. The rear looked like it had kind of been abandoned, although not, formally. There wasn't a cut off or a wall, but there was water damage. In addition to the asbestos containing material, it had been open to the elements, so the ceilings got waterlogged, and we carted it out.
And you can see the visible water. And that's apparently the stairs to the basement, but
When was all the removal work done?
I want to say, we closed on this in September of 19. I want to say, shortly thereafter, maybe December, January timeframe. maybe a little bit before. Frankly, I wasn't even thinking about it, because, shame on us. We just thought it was perfunctory would come and hopefully, take these down. So my attention really wasn't focused on it because we never really thought about any preservation of the property at all. We locked it and the building was secure, but we did have people that broke the windows, and I don't know how long they were living in there for because we shut the utilities off.
But the rain if there was some snow, which I don't think there was that much snow, but if there was some snow that got in, it got in after you removed everything.
I think there was some holes in the back roof that soaked through. There was leaking roof, pretty substantial, and it soaked through, into the walls, into the ceiling. They did contain asbestos-containing material, and we just had everything carted out.
Gotcha. But this is how it looks. So today, on a rainy day like today, the rain's pouring in.
It was sunny when we looked at it.
Yeah, see that, Tom.
But yeah, as you can see on the left of the picture, that is open to the elements. But
Right here, yeah.
Yeah, there was wood rot. There's a lot of wood rot, wet.
That's what I was going to also say is that there was definitely substantial water damage that had happened it's been happening for quite a while because the wood is dry rotted through or wet rotted, I guess.
Oh, okay.
For a long time, and we never really were able to get an inspection prior to closing. It was just, well, what do we care what it looks like inside? I mean, we'd have no intention of wanting to keep it anyway. So we were dealing with a trust and an elderly gentleman, and so it didn't really matter to us. It was really the land area, so we weren't aware of how poor a condition it was in when we closed in September of 2019.
Okay, does anybody have any other questions for the applicant?
No.
Okay, so now, for my second try at this, I'm going to open it up to the public for any information that they'd like to present on this property. So if there's someone who would like to present information on this property, if you could, if you've called in by phone, just say, you state your name. If you've come in by video, you could raise your hand. I will call on you, just like class. Okay, not hearing anything from the public. I'm going to close that portion of this hearing. And now the commissioners will have an opportunity to discuss amongst ourselves the information, the additional information that was provided, and hopefully get a motion on the floor. So, David, do you want to kick this off?
Sure. Thank you, Elise. So I was able to find out a number of things. I put together a document, and I want to also thank Commissioner Marilyn Roach for sending me certain things as well. I'm joining by telephone, so I can't see anything that's being projected. I know Gideon, I sent this to Gideon, and he said he would put it on the screen.
So he has now. So we're looking at the
Okay.
1916 Sanborn map sheet 29.
Okay, so as you can see, this is, you can see 88 Galen Street there. And if you see above the 88 on the left there, it's number 70 in parentheses. And that's an important piece of this because in 1912, the town renumbered almost all of the structures in town because there was issues with development and there wasn't enough space between and among existing buildings to build new ones. So they renumbered the whole town. So in 1916, the address of the structure was 88. But if you go down below in 1904, you can see that it's 70. And if you then go back up to 1916, you can see the 70 in parentheses. So I wanted to create that link so it's very clear we're looking at the very same thing.
Okay.
So then in 1904, it's 70. In 1916, it's labeled as a grocery store. In 1904, it's a dwelling. In 1894, it's a dwelling. We can't necessarily hold our hat on this to be accurate. These are representations of what the Sanborn Insurance Company felt was there. We have other sources that are probably more authoritative. So continuing on back to 1889, you can see Mrs. Owen Murray at the very bottom of that little square or rectangle. And so the house next door, the one that burned, this 88 Galen Street was sort of an outbuilding of it, and it was their way of making a bit of extra money, whether it was a saloon, whether it was a funeral parlor, or whether it was a grocery store. This is what that building was, and it was part of the larger Murray plot. And Mrs. Owen Murray was a widow at this time. If you continue on down in 1884, it says undertakers, and it appears to be vacant. So you can sort of see what's going on. And then the below that is the O.H. Bailey map of 1879, and you can see it there. You can see the old house there that has burned recently. And then to the right of it, you see the one-story building without the add-on is there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So there we go. And then if we continue on, the 1874 Beers Atlas, you can see it's very blurry. I'm sorry that my picture wasn't any better than that, but it says, I believe, Woodbury, Thayer, and someone else. And so the building is not there. It's very clear it's not there. So the deed references help us identify when this building was built, because it was sold from Woodford and Gerald to Owen Murray in 1878, and they're required to erect a house on the property within a year. And in that other map above, in 1879, it's all there. So this structure was built sometime in 1878 or 1879. Since the property was conveyed on December 20th, it probably wasn't built in 11 days. So I think we can confidently say that this structure was built in 1879. If I had access to the property record at the library, I could confirm that more clearly. But it's either 1878 or 1879, and I think 1879 is more likely based on the facts and circumstances. So we found out that Nora Morrissey was born in Ireland. She was the daughter of Michael Morrissey and Catherine O'Brien. She emigrated from Ireland to the U.S., married Owen Murray, who was born in 1851. They settled in Watertown. He died rather young in 1887. I don't think he was 40. He was a saloon owner and later a grocer. It didn't mention anything about the funeral business, so that would be interesting. I don't know how you could conduct a funeral business in that smallish kind of place, but
It was just a viewing place.
oh, maybe it was. Maybe it was. It was funny. I was remarking at one point to Elise that maybe they should sell jellies out of the building, and well, they did. This was a grocery store, apparently, and so the family sold it at some point in 1906, and then it continued to be a grocery store at least until 1919. At the time, the town was sort of filled with these smallish grocery stores. Very few of them remain at the moment. So this doesn't appear to have been a house exactly, at least early on. It appeared to be an outbuilding that served a more commercial purpose. And it does seem rather smallish, even by 19th century standards for domestic dwelling purposes. So
when we saw the pictures, Tom or Gideon, there were stairs. Did I see stairs?
Down to the basement, below the extension, there's steps down to the basement. There were stairs.
Only for the addition, it looked like.
Oh, okay.
It was in the addition, yeah.
I thought I saw them going up, so we must have been in the basement. Were you in the basement?
No,
I
No,
wasn't
that
in the
was,
basement.
that was the
Yeah.
headroom in a closet for the stairs that went outside or to the basement.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay, David, thank you for that. Tom, do you have anything to add since you were in the property?
Well, let me say that I really was shocked by the condition of the property. Now, of course, walls and ceilings exterior had been taken down, but even aside from that, at one end of the old building, it must be where it was probably not only a little bathroom, which looked like maybe there was no toilet or sink in the room, but clearly that was it. And then there were other things indicating probably where the stove and I don't know what else they may have had. The division between that part of the old house and the new was simply beadboard. It was something added at a later time. But in general, the house was not at all in good condition. And my feeling after seeing it was that it's the kind of thing that would, if anybody were to use it, it would be totally gutted and rethought as to what it was like. The outside front is quite attractive, and so forth. But it could only be used for some kind of commercial purpose. And the other thing with that is, I wanted to mention is the ground slopes very sharply behind the house, or actually right behind the old part of the house, and continues to go down sharply, so that it would not be very, I don't know how much of it is even belongs to this property, but belongs as part of the lot line of this property. But it would not be easy to have, let's say, a parking lot for business use behind it if it were to be sold and used for something else. Frankly, my feeling was that the extent of the reconstruction would be so great, probably including, I don't know what they would do about how the water and sewer are, that it's highly unlikely that anyone would want to use it. And though its history is very interesting, my only hope would be that maybe conceivably someone might want to buy the front part and move it someplace. But other than that, I'm not so sure I would, even though I might say it was preferably preserved, I'm not sure I would argue that we need to impose a demolition delay on it.
Okay, let's hear from
But even
other.
if we did, I have a feeling it wouldn't make any difference. They're still working on the design of the building, so by the time they are ready to do anything, the year would be gone by and they could tear it down anyway. So anyway, that's my thinking about it.
Thank you, Tom. Marilyn, do you have any comments you want to add or questions to discuss?
Well, of course, it depends exactly how decrepit the frame is, but yeah, I was kind of hoping that the front original part, just the shell of it, could be used for some purpose. Obviously, not a dwelling. The jelly stand, for example, but not necessarily in that place.
Right, okay.
At best.
Okay. I heard, David, do you want to add anything, or I know we just heard from you, but.
I do, actually, yes, I do. I don't think anyone thinks that this property shouldn't be completely gutted. It's what it is. I mean, the property is 140 years old. It needs to be gutted. Of course it does. No one would ever suggest that this property could be, this building could be used in any habitable way. No one could say that beadboard is so crucial and important. Well, it isn't. It's beadboard. It's supposed to be replaced. It's intended to be replaced. Certainly the back portion of the building itself isn't anything important in and of itself. The front is more important, but those materials are so old and potentially problematic. No one is suggesting that this should be saved in some museum kind of way. I think what I'm hoping people would consider would be reusing this building appropriately. This building was a commercial building. The current petitioner is a commercial developer. So what are the options? What options can be used for this on this building? And again, no one's suggesting that we need to use fetid horsehair plaster today. I think if that needs to be removed, that's certainly fine. If the building needs to be shifted to make sense in the overall developer's scheme of development, that's fine. But so I certainly don't want anyone to think that we're slavishly expecting the developer to live in this fetid, hazardous building that's open to the elements, because that's clearly not what I don't think anyone is suggesting here.
Okay, Matthew?
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Well, I think that the structure itself, while is interestingly old, and I have to thank David and Marilyn for their research. I wouldn't have guessed that it had such an interesting history, but and I do in general think that age is important. Age counts, and I've said that before. But in this situation, I don't believe it's enough to justify. The structure itself is very simple. I don't see any architecturally important aspects that I'd want to preserve. Even more importantly, I think that in its context, its neighborhood context is minimal. It doesn't really, it's not part of a fabric of a neighborhood that is going to be missed from. The context of the real estate market makes it clear to me that it's going to be torn down. It's not going to fit in a developer's plan for what's likely and I think inevitably going to happen there. So my feeling is, what purpose would we be serving if we put a demolition delay on this? I don't see a purpose. I don't think it would be doing the town good. I don't think it would be preserving a historical resource that really matters to the town, in my opinion. And I think what David is suggesting has more relevance in other situations than this. I just don't think it's fair to ask a developer to adaptively reuse the structure, even though it's old and quite old actually, in terms of buildings in the town. It doesn't make sense to me to impose that kind of burden in this situation with this building in this location. And I wouldn't feel good about standing in the way of what I think is inevitably going to be a development which will be good for the town.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. Joe? Do you have any?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. First, I think I backtracked a little on my vote last week, and I'm glad that we had a delay. I think that the history of this building is really interesting, and I appreciate the work that was put into it to determine that. That said, looking at these pictures, I'm in agreement with Matthew that it seems like it would have to be a complete gut. And when I say complete, I mean right down to the beam. And at that point, you're kind of losing the essence of what the building is and was. I also agree that I don't see this being repurposed when looking at the plans for which the developer has for the site. Just don't see how that would get incorporated, and I think we would just be dealing with the inevitable. I could see myself voting that it is preferably preserved for a message, but it would be hard to propose a delay. I do wish, and I like to say this for the record, I wish that we were able to see this before it was ripped apart, to see if the weather, before the weather got into it, if it might have been in better condition to save. And I think it's a shame that didn't happen.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Susan Steele?
I agree with both Matthew and Joe in most of what they said, and it makes me wish that that we had found this building before it became so kind of irreparably damaged, and wish that we had some pictures of it from when it was perhaps, well, we just wish we had some pictures of it from its earlier days to have given us a better idea of the house and its details and so on and so forth. But while I might agree with Joe that I would prefer to have it preserved, but I don't think I would vote for any demolition delay.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Any other, the commissioners have any other comments that they want to add?
Marilyn Roach here. Just that it's one of those humble buildings that get overlooked by history because it was part of just ordinary, everyday people's lives. And we never get to see these things, or a lot of things, until they're in such terrible state. Just saying.
Okay, anybody else? David, you're lit up. Do you mean to be lit up?
Well, my phone's sitting, I'm really not lit up per se,
Okay.
but I'll speak up for the house and the building and say, you know, this is an example of an everyday, very vernacular building that was very prevalent in Watertown at one point and isn't anymore. Just there aren't any of these around anymore. So this is among the last of a type.
And so just as a comment from me, you know, part of what we do is the whole purpose of the ordinance is for us to be able to work with the applicant and take a step, oh, battery's running low, take a step back and say, is there a way that we can preserve this property? Is there something we can do with it, working with the applicant, that we can save it, but also work with the plans that the applicant has? I mean, I don't know, the Arsenal has done such interesting things in developing, you know, the food trucks on Thursdays that they had over by Athena Health and doing different things with the property that has preserved, but allowing the preservation of the historical nature of the property while still using it for what they want to use it for. Maybe food trucks was not a good example, but that's what I would hope for from this applicant, is that this is part of Watertown and it's 140 years old-ish. And as much as I understand why the asbestos had to be removed, I wish a tarp had been put over the holes in the roof so that some of this damage might not have occurred. But if there was some way that the applicant could possibly take that front piece and incorporate it into what they're doing, to say, Watertown, we're building this on Galen Street, but we see you and we see what was there and we respect the history of Watertown. It's not green and Concord, but it's still Lexington. It's still important. So that's what I would like to see from the applicant, but it does look in quite bad shape at this point. I don't know why I'm only seeing my face and not everybody else's. But
Oh,
so in any event, all right. So those are my comments. Does anybody have a motion that they'd like to put forward?
Well, I move that the property at 88 Galen Street be preferably preserved.
Okay, so the motion from Tom Malone is that the property at 88 Galen Street is preferably preserved. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Susan Steele has seconded that motion. And now what I have to do is go through each of us for a roll call type vote. So Tom's made the motion, Susan second, and Marilyn, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes.
preserve.
David Russo,
Yes.
Matthew Walter,
No.
Joe Panto,
I'm gonna stick with my vote from last week, no.
and me, I vote yes. So Susan, Janessa, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yeses and 2 noes. Oh,
uh-oh. Her battery just died.
Whose battery?
Oh, no.
Well,
Elisa's,
this is
At the
this is
crucial
David. I
moment.
can this is David. I can take over.
she may be able to plug in and
Okay.
turn
That
it
was
back
fine.
on, but
Was that an accurate representation of the vote? Did everyone vote?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. So we have, so we believe it's preferably preserved. And so the next question is, should we impose a demolition delay? We should have some discussion about that. Does anyone want to kick that discussion off?
I don't think we should impose a demolition delay.
Okay.
But I do agree with Elisa's plea, I guess, for lack of a better word, that the developer perhaps gives some thought to how some aspect of this building, perhaps a facade or some acknowledgement of what was there, would be really a wonderful gesture
Mhm.
to the town.
Yeah. This is David. I am in favor of a demolition delay. I think we're moving quickly, that there aren't any potential reuses for this building. I think we're presuming we haven't really heard that there aren't. We just believe there aren't, and I think we need to get those assurances more specifically. I find that, I'm most sorry to hear that the building was left open, but that wasn't it wasn't sort of happenstance that happened. That was as a result of specific activity that the developer took, and so the building was opened. I don't feel that we should necessarily reward that by allowing the demolition to occur, by just saying, well, that's just unfortunate that it happened. It was a neglect. Admittedly, they didn't expect that the building would be preserved in any way, shape, or form, but it was voluntary. It wasn't, So it feels to me that I think we're rushing to judgment that this building could be demolished. Elise, is that you?
Lisa's coming back.
Okay.
Let me, I'm activating her.
Yeah.
sorry about that.
Yeah.
Am I back?
Yes.
You're
Yeah.
back.
I hear you.
I jumped in for a moment, so what I did was I summarized the vote. Everyone voted. It was as you suggested, and then I opened up the discussion for the demolition delay question. Susan Steele said that she believed that the building shouldn't have a demolition delay on it. I said that I thought it should. I thought we were jumping a little quickly, that we were sort of giving the benefit of the doubt to the developer that there are no options for this building.
Can
I
you hear?
appreciate that. I apologize for the dramatics.
Can I say something?
hold on a second, Tom.
Yeah.
Yes, Matthew, go ahead.
I don't think what David just said is accurate about holding the current owner responsible for the water damage. If I'm reading this right, that hole in the roof is not due to activities which they did in their asbestos abatement. That looks like a long-term, previous owner created, or negligence on the behalf of the previous owner, not the current owner. So I don't think holding them accountable for that is fair.
Any other comments?
Well, in spite of what I said earlier, I think that an argument can be made for the demolition delay with the hope that perhaps some use could be found of the front building, either by moving it or by in some way incorporating it into the plan for this development. But it's so small, it could be moved relatively easily if someone could find a suitable use. And if that would maybe encourage the developer to at least offer it for use somewhere else.
Marilyn?
I
Oh.
would vote for a demolition delay.
Okay. Sorry, Tom, I didn't know you hadn't finished. Marilyn, do you have any comments on this portion?
Well, if the plans for the whole development aren't finished yet, then there's time to think about this sort of thing. It's not like the bulldozer's already there.
Okay. Susan? Have you commented on the demolition delay portion?
Well, I
You don't have to. You don't have to
Oh,
comment. I
okay.
just wondered if you want to.
Well, no, I don't have any comments.
Okay. Okay. And we've heard Joe, I believe, and Walter, Matthew, right? Okay, so, and again, sorry about that. Does anybody have a motion that they want to put forth on the issue of a demolition delay? Marilyn, you're lit up, but I don't hear anything.
I'm just breathing.
Okay, that's good.
Well,
So this is David. So I'm sorry for the brain freeze. So if we're going to suggest a demolition delay, are we proposing a specific time period, or is it just, I suppose it would be a time period, isn't it?
I think if the motion's put forth, that if someone wants to put forth a motion that there be a demolition delay be imposed, I think in the past, we've done it both ways. We've entertained the motion, and if the motion passes, we then have a motion about how long. Because the delay can be anywhere from a day to a year.
Yeah. Okay. So I move that a demolition delay be imposed upon 88 Galen Street.
Okay.
I will second that.
All right, so David has, Susan, for your notes, David has put forth a motion that a demolition delay be imposed on 88 Galen Street, and Tom Malone has seconded that motion. So now I'll do the roll call. Susan Steele, how do you vote?
I vote no demolition delay.
Marilyn Roach,
Yes.
Joe Panto,
No demolition delay.
Matthew Walter,
No demolition delay.
and I vote yes, demolition delay. So we have 4 yes votes and 3 no. Does everybody agree with that?
That's right.
Okay, well, I mean, not agree with the outcome of the vote, but just that we have 4 and 3. So now we need to discuss how long that delay can be. We don't have to discuss it, but someone needs to put a motion forward if they don't want to discuss it for a length. And according to the ordinance, we can impose a delay up to a year. And remembering when we do this portion, that the point of the delay is to work with the developer to find a way to preserve this asset of the town. If there's a way, there may not be, but those discussions haven't happened. And so it's to give that an opportunity. I don't know, David, do you want to add anything?
I don't think so. I think we haven't really spoken with the developer about what those opportunities could and couldn't be. The plot itself seems kind of large-ish. Perhaps there could be a use directly there. I certainly agree and understand that perhaps this particular place isn't opportune for this building to be. I get it. In the same way, no one's suggesting that we live with bedded, plaster. No one's suggesting that necessarily has to remain right there. I think having that discussion would be valuable.
Oh, Elise, can I add a question for you?
Yeah,
before
sure.
we make
Sure.
The next. David Russo had suggested that the front part of the structure was the part that was historically significant. Are you discussing the entire structure or the original structure in the front?
I think the motion was on the entire structure. David, do you want to comment on that?
It is the whole structure. I think as we have discussions with the developer, perhaps as we make trade-offs about what makes sense, maybe the back portion should, can be validly removed, and that's one point of negotiation.
Okay, does anybody have any comments or want to, on the commission, have any discussion regarding the length of delay that would be imposed?
I think it's highly unlikely that anything will result from this. If I was in the developer's shoes, I don't think they would be much choice but to wait it out. I can't see how adaptive reuse is going to work in this situation.
And I don't know that I disagree with you, except for one point, Matt, and that is that I'd like to try. And if there can be nothing and the developer says, don't really care, and I'm waiting a year, there is nothing we can do about that. But if there's something that can be done because the discussion hasn't happened with the developer, we also have the opportunity to come back before the commission at any meeting and shorten any delay that we've imposed. Maybe the discussions happen with Mr. Doherty and the commission realizes or comes to the agreement that, you know what, this isn't going to happen. There's nothing we can do here. We've tried, they've tried, in good faith, we've all tried. So let's shorten delay and get it over with. That can happen, and that has happened in the past. So I just like the opportunity to talk. I don't know that anything's going to come of it. I'm hopeful, but I'm an optimist. So.
Do we have to take into consideration the current environment with regards to how long it's going to take to even have that conversation?
Yeah, it's a good point, although we're talking now. And I can see Mr. Doherty. And when I have my cord plugged into my computer, I can talk even longer. I think those conversations can start now. I don't think that I understand the health climate out there. I'm not going to be meeting you, to be frank, in person, but I think the conversations can start. And we can be looking at the plans that he's already presented, and maybe there's been a change to the plan since the last time he presented them. I don't know.
Well, if that's the case, then I would say that, in my opinion, right, that gets scheduled now. We have that conversation with how it might be incorporated. They're able to then go and take it back and look at that possibility. That doesn't seem like it should be a year. It seems like it should be a much shorter period.
I would agree.
What are you thinking for the time? Joe?
The first number that comes to that is 3 months.
That's actually the first thing that came to my mind as well.
Okay. That's Susan that said that's the first number that came to her mind.
Elise, I don't want to disrupt this, but I just want to acknowledge that Jody was trying to raise her hand, but that this is the part of the session where the public would not be weighing in.
This is my favorite part, Jody. This is not the favorite part, but this is where you can see us, but you can't talk to us. So I apologize. So, hi, but we can't talk. David, did you have a comment that Joe had suggested 3, Susan supported 3?
I prefer a lengthier one only to the degree that we always can lift it earlier. If we tie ourselves into 3 months, it's 3 months, and that doesn't seem very long to me.
I
Marilyn?
agree with I agree with that.
Oh, Marilyn agrees with that. Tom, did you say something?
I agree that given that we can reduce it, I think we might start with a year and come back and drop it at any time. You know, I just think we do the standard year, but bear in mind that we may for various reasons either something works out or we conclude that nothing can work out. We'll see. But for instance, if the front building were offered to somebody who would move it, that would mean there'd have to be some time for someone to inspect it and think about where they could move it, so forth. So let's start with a year and recognizing that we can reduce that time.
I think my only objection to making it a year is that it doesn't put, I would like to see a little more rigorous deadline on a decision that would be made that would kind of be thumbs up or thumbs down relative to looking at options. I'd hate to see it run on. I'd hate to see it run on longer than 6 months.
I think we have to take into consideration that this is the center of our town, right? And it's a pretty big blight at the moment. So, you know, if we can all work together in the next 3 to 6 months and get this taken care of so that it could go one way or the other and some type of construction can start, I think it's to the benefit of the community as a whole.
So just to clarify though, I think that what I'm going to just say Marilyn, Tom, and David were saying is not the opposite of what you're saying. They actually work together. The impetus to get it done and have the discussions is the longer delay. Then the developers wants to talk to us, wants to get this done quickly, wants to find a solution with us because he doesn't want this to last a year. And I don't blame him. But to impose 3 months, that's kind of like, well, you know, see with the July 4th celebration, I don't have any impetus because I can wait 3 months, no problem. I don't have to have a discussion. And Mr. Doherty, please don't think that I'm saying that that's what you were due. I'm just saying in general, hypothetical, not you specifically. So what you're saying is you want those to be meaningful discussions and have a delay that means something. That's the year, not the 3 months. The 3 months is a throwaway, in my opinion. That's just how I view the pressure of both sides to come together and talk. And again, I'm not sure there's a solution. And I want to find that solution as quickly as anybody does, because I agree with what Joe said. What's going to happen, the development needs to start. And I don't know if I can ask when you plan to start, Mr. Doherty, development?
Well, I mean, as soon as possible. We want to, we're in the process now, we're engaged with planning as soon as possible. And I guess if, you know, that's the short answer to your question, but
you haven't gone through, have you passed all, I call them gates, but the town gates, have you gone through all the different committees and gotten all the stamps of approval? No.
No, we haven't. We got the zoning change that we need. We're working with planning. We're
Okay.
in peer review for design, and you know, design's going to be very different than, I know you had mentioned the Arsenal. I was on the Arsenal as the asset manager for Harvard University, and that was an adaptive reuse of existing buildings. This is new ground up construction, and that doesn't fit, and it's falling apart. And if we could get it off the site, someone wants to come and take it, great, but it's not going to get rehabbed. I can
So
tell you.
Steve or Gideon, what realistically, how much time before he's got all the stamps and flags and bows on this?
Well, I guess I'd offer that, that could take some time, but it's also, I think, reasonable for them as an applicant to know what they're going into that planning process with.
I agree.
If we want to, relocate that building somewhere on the site, then that's a different plan than they'd be bringing forward to the planning board in a few months. So while yes, there's some time associated with going through that process to get their plans approved, also that uncertainty of what are we doing with this corner of the property, I think is problematic to proceed in that process.
And the not knowing if they're looking at trying to accommodate the entire structure or the front part of the structure makes it, it's like if you feel that the front part of the structure is what you want them to preserve, then I feel that that's an important thing to state now and not wait as a negotiating process over months. But
Well, what would that matter? I mean, if we said it was just the front part, he can knock down the back part and he's still gonna want to deal with the front part. So what's it matter if it's the front or the back or both? I mean, we've said it's the whole thing, but I'm curious why you think that makes a difference.
well, if they're trying to accommodate the entire structure into their development, it's a much bigger footprint and it's a larger piece of building to try to accommodate whether they're moving it or keeping it. And so the number of discussions with the committee, I don't know.
I don't think the discussions would be that grander because of that back piece, but that's just me.
The back piece is larger than the front, but it's in significantly worse shape.
Yeah, no, I could see that from the pictures.
It makes things simpler if you're rethinking how it could be used on the site to have a clear idea of what you're talking about in terms of kind of a footprint.
Mhm.
Understood. Okay, any other comments? David, Marilyn, Tom, Joe, Matt, or Susan?
This is David
Maybe
Russo.
Or Stephen, wait a minute, Steve has a,
I was just going to offer one suggestion, and maybe it's a good idea, maybe not. I don't know. You haven't yet voted for a demolition delay time frame, and in sort of debating what makes sense in terms of trying to figure out if there's something to do with the site. Maybe another option is to defer that vote and continue to the next meeting and give the developer an opportunity to really evaluate whether there is anything that could be done with that front portion of the house and really come back with a more thoughtful response to that. This is what we evaluated. This is, how it's constructed. This is how much space it takes, how it maybe could or couldn't fit into something, or there's another property could be put on, or at least give them an opportunity to evaluate that before a delay was established. And I don't know, that is a shorter time frame to maybe have some of that evaluation than going ahead with a year delay or a 3-month delay or something of that nature. Just a thought.
and it's a great thought, Mr. Doherty.
Yes,
Would you like that opportunity?
we would. I
think it would be
mean,
helpful?
we'd like to avail ourselves of that opportunity to get structural people in there, to get our architects, engineers through the building, because where it sits now, strategically, and you don't know, that's not your fault. That's probably the worst place. That's the access to a public park. So we don't want it there. It's falling down. I can't see, but we'll go through the exercise and we'd like the opportunity to come back and say, we've studied this. We paid a lot of money for it. It would cost a lot of money to get that habitable, if you will. And so, let us look at it. I'd appreciate that opportunity because, a year delay, mixed meeting, COVID, we're not being able to really know what our plan is or how we can, have a contingency. It makes it very difficult to go through the process, the development process.
David, did you want to say something?
Yes, yes, I would. I'd be in favor of waiting till next month. I think that would be helpful. As I said before, I think it's been unfortunate that I think we've been jumping to conclusions that there are no opportunities for the structure. So I think that would be helpful to throw the ball back into the developer's court and see what those opportunities are. I haven't heard anyone say anything about preserving the rear portion of the structure. It's relatively new, and I don't believe it to be very significant. And I think I haven't heard anyone suggest otherwise. So, to the degree that we can say, we're interested in the front part of the building, I'm just one person. That's my interest. I think it's a lot of people's interest because I think otherwise the structure, that back portion was in the late 40s or something. So it's not quite as important. So I would welcome another month. And if the town inspector can go through as well, so we have a representative of the town who's authoritative on structural integrity could go through, that would also be helpful from my
That'd be
opinion.
very helpful.
So just thinking about that, our next meeting is always the second Thursday of the month. We are meeting as Zoom here because we don't want to be in the same place. Are all these people going to be able to get out there, and are you going to be able to have those meetings in 4 weeks' time? Considering the health climate we're in.
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Darty. Yes, I thought you could see me staring right at you.
I can. I didn't know you're staring at me. But yes, I mean, I'll make myself available as I did for Gideon and Mr. Malone to provide access, whether it's an inspector or whomever or other members of the historical commission to get in, take a look. I'm happy to do that, keeping our appropriate social distance. But yeah, we could do that. We could have our consultants do that. But I would welcome a building inspector to take a look at it because I think it's on the verge of, and I'm not a contractor, but on the verge of maybe being condemnable. I don't know, but
Yeah,
I would like a professional opinion.
Okay, and Steve, that sounds like something that, the town, I know this town hall is closed for now, but people like yourself, Gideon, Susan, you're all still working. So are we gonna be able to, I don't wanna put us in a position, not us so much as Mr. Doherty, that he couldn't get the people out there because people weren't able to get there due to the health climate.
I think in terms of the town staff, that won't be a problem.
Okay.
Whether they're able to get their architect or engineers or whatever, that's for them to determine, but
That won't be a problem.
staff and the town building inspector, that's all.
If there is an issue, then they can always request it to be continued again.
Oh, okay. Mr. Doherty's like, again? No.
I have a completely uninformed idea.
Okay,
This
love those.
uninformed idea, I'm imagining that the little house could walk itself over to the public park.
I thought of that when he was talking about
Did you
his
think about that?
walkway to the park. Maybe it could be used to store some benches or something in the winter.
Yeah, well, or it could be used, I don't know how it could be used, really.
But I think what Mr. Doherty was saying, and this is great discussion because this is what we want,
Yeah,
is that it might cost so much to bring that structure up to a point that it would be usable for something in that little park, that it might be cost prohibitive and that
Yeah.
might outweigh.
yeah.
But that's the creativity that we're looking for.
Yeah, perhaps it's a field house. Perhaps it's something not even heated. It's just something that's there and very bare bones. I don't know. I mean, it seems as though there's any number of possibilities. I'm sure I couldn't even begin to name them.
A nice big plaque.
I like a little plaque that says, this used to be, right?
On this site stood.
Maybe it could say a jelly house.
Okay.
Anyway, okay. So in order to continue this portion of the vote, I need to have a motion on the floor.
So this is David. I move that we continue this hearing till our May meeting.
Second, Marilyn?
We continue not the well, I guess it's the hearing. Okay.
Yep.
Marilyn, you second that?
Yes.
And Tom, are you in favor or against?
I'm in favor of that.
Joe, favor or against?
In favor.
Susan, in favor or against?
I'm in favor. It could be a little visitor center.
Thanks, Susan. Susan is just alive with ideas now.
Yes, I am.
Matt, in favor or against?
I would be against continuing.
And I vote in favor. So that would be 6 in favor and 1 against Susan Janess for continuing to the next hearing. Okay, so that concludes this. Thank you, Ms. Doherty, for your patience and your contributions and cooperation.
Look forward to seeing everyone next month.
I'll have my mask on.
Of course, anyone that's interested in coming to see, they can coordinate, they can call me directly or coordinate through Gideon, and I'm happy to provide access to anybody that wants to walk the site, get inside, whatever.
Super. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
If you want to leave us, we won't be offended.
Okay, I'm gonna take off.
Okay, bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
All right. For those of you left, the second item on our agenda, we have 2 discussion items. The first one is the proposed letter of support for a grant, the Mount Auburn Cemetery, Washington Tower. I propose that we just continue that discussion to the next meeting, if everyone's okay with that. And I don't think we need to take a vote on discussion items and continuing those, right? Okay. And there's the B, Section 106 letter, World Tech regarding the Mass DOT proposed project to rehabilitate Mount Auburn Street. Susan Janess, I think this is the item that we were provided by email, and as David had responded, we didn't have enough information to comment. And I don't recall that any other information came forward. So we need more information about this before a letter can be written or we can make a comment. So if you could get in touch with them and let them know that.
And this is the initial, and it's been so long now.
Yeah.
It's a MassDOT noticing requirement, their initial one, so there wasn't additional information. Okay. The plan set has now been submitted to the state. Is that right, Steve? 25% design.
The 25% design has been submitted by the states to the state, and we've gotten some comments from them. The other part of that is that, you know, the concept is basically almost entirely within the existing right-of-way. It's just a reconfiguration of the pavement and a rehabilitation of the road. But, you know, and we can certainly provide you with some of that information, some of the details about what's proposed.
Okay, I think that would be helpful if they want us to comment.
Sure. No, that's
So we
fair.
have, those are all posted to the DPW website.
Okay.
Under the project's been discussed for, I don't know, 10 years, Steve?
Oh, I think probably longer than that.
So we'll try to find you the links, or I'll reach out to DP, or someone will reach out to DPW to try to get you the information that we have.
Okay.
Which is not what the letter was about, which was just I think it was the environmental trigger that required a notice to every board and commission in the entire town.
Okay.
I realize that it's neither here nor there, but those kinds of notifications aren't helpful if we don't have information to make comments on. Simply telling us that it's going to happen, it's almost reflexive, like we want to say, well, no, then we're against it, you know, and then, you know, because we just don't know what it is, and the information that they had was so limited. There's no possible way to anyone could intelligently provide information, and you know, so it's discouraging that we get these kinds of things, and there's no real possible way for us to respond.
Okay, so you get us what you can.
Yeah, we'll get you more information,
Okay.
and certainly if you're expected to comment, then having some information about what it is you're commenting on that's fair.
Okay, and then the final item under discussion is the update on the the award ceremony.
Hmm.
I don't think we're having that. I'm just gonna call it now.
Not likely.
I think it's premature to suggest that we could be in a room with each other. The numbers that we get for our fabulous awards would be, it gets packed. I don't think it'd be safe because we were shooting for May, I think, right, Susan? So I think we're gonna have to call that for this year. And unless we decide to have it at a later time when things are healthier. So,
If we could hold any nominations we get for next year, that would be great. Or maybe we should consider even in the fall instead of doing it if we have a good crop, maybe we should hold off and do it in the fall.
so I was thinking the fall too, David, because we decided to make this an alternating year event. And this is our on year. If we wait another year, then the applicants or the nominees from last year are now not obsolete, but they become stale, right?
Yeah, feels that way.
Yeah. September sounds good.
Why don't we see what we get, you know?
Okay, and we'll see how the air is.
Yes.
Okay.
And
So that's
then,
all we had on the agenda. Is there anyone that wants to add anything before everybody goes?
So the arsenal the arsenal projects aren't being discussed? Why did, I thought I had
it's not going to be discussed tonight. It's not on the agenda, but I wanted you to
okay.
have it so that you would be aware of it and put it on a future agenda.
Okay.
They are going to be submitting that or something similar to that to the state, and then the state will be submitting a request or a comment from you. So they originally wanted to be on the agenda to present what they were looking at doing. They're proposing to clean up the property along the front. We don't need to talk about it now. I just wanted you to get it on consider putting it on your agenda. They would be willing to come if it's feasible, and even if it's not, you have the plans in front of you now as each commission member. And so that was going to be my suggestion, was to add it to the agenda.
For next month?
It appears we're having a meeting next month, so that would be a good idea.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I'll comment that this went way more smooth than I thought it would.
Really? Oh, you mean because of the Zoom?
Just everything, yeah. It went.
Well, yes, how many person hours went into setting this up?
Yeah,
Thank
exactly.
you. Thank you all.
Gideon and Susan and Steve, you guys.
Yeah.
I know there's no
Yeah, well
overtime.
done.
Wow. Thank you for making sure it went smoothly.
I mean, we
Yeah,
could do this
thank
in
you.
snowstorms and all kinds of things.
Because now I can say, well, what's the difference? It's 8:26, but all you have to do is turn me off and go to bed.
So don't get used to it.
Yeah, of course,
Nobody will
we
know
don't
if we're
always
in our
have
pajamas.
we don't always have the legislative authority to do things this way.
That's true.
It's a bit of an anomaly, so just keep that in mind.
Although I think those are changing. I mean, the court's changing as far as allowing notarizations and things. Swearing in by video, you can do
Yep.
that now. Court reporters, so that they can take depositions and not be in the same room. So things are changing. Pretty soon we'll never have to see each other in live.
There's,
So anyway,
yes.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Right.
Thank you, Gideon. Thanks, Susan.
Are we adjourning?
We adjourn.
Yeah,
I
you
move
gotta-
to
Carolyn,
adjourn.
hang up on us. Tom, hang up.
Do I move to
Okay.
adjourn? I move to adjourn.
I second.
Sweet.
Yes, adjourn.
Adjourned. All in favor?
Aye.
Joe, are you in favor? Matt, you're in favor? Susan, you're in favor?
Yes, I
Tom
am.
left, so he's abstaining.
All
Thank
right.
you all.
Stay
Okay.
safe, everybody.
All right. Bye, guys.
Good
Bye.
night. Bye.